Hi, everyone. It's really great to see you today. So this is the third session for the Churchill Enterprise program. And I'd like to welcome John Liechty, who's going to do a workshop on how to write a business plan or a value proposition. So I'm going to hand over to you, John, to introduce yourself and just let us know when you want any kind of interaction or feedback or questions.
Sure.
And everyone's going to get involved to make up for the small size of our audience. Great.
Right, yeah, so there are some question and answer sessions. There's a little bit of work for you to do on your business plan. Just a couple little, get yourself thinking, get yourself moving forward on it, and then we'll see how quickly we go. I've not given this lecture before, so it might be just 20 minutes. Who knows? I think we'll go a little bit longer. I'll tell you some stories or other things if you're interested in that. So the value proposition is critical. It's kind of like, you could think of it as your elevator pitch, right? There's gonna be a number of times if you're an entrepreneur where you're gonna get an opportunity for 30 seconds. Someone with money or influence or ability to help move your project along will look at you and say, what are you all up to? What are you doing? Why does it make sense? Why should I mean, it's not they don't like you as a person, right? But money is a very interesting dynamic. It has a very interesting dynamic. People have it. They're very focused on, is this worth my time or not? In a professional sense. Now, personal and that element might be something completely different. So if you want to get beyond them just trying to mentor you and pat you on the back, then you've got to be able to tell them what you're up to. Okay? And it's got to make sense. Like, it's got to make just credible sense to an ordinary person. They'd say, yeah, that makes sense. I could see myself putting out money for that, right? So you got to get it really simple. It's one of the hardest art forms of communication to master, is to take whatever your big complex idea is and the way it fits into the broad economy and get it down to 30 seconds. So it's the art of selling, so to speak. But it doesn't have to be, you don't have to convince people with things that are make-believe or things that are hyperbole. That actually, most people who really been around the block can just see that and they'll smile and wave at you. You guys ever seen Madagascar with the penguins? And the guy says smile and wave to the penguins. They'll just do that to you. And they'll say, yeah, we could talk again later. And their secretary never gets back to you, things like that. Okay. So we're going to try to see if we can move past that a bit. And so this is the essence of your startup, essentially, is your value proposition. And the value proposition is going to be going to the customer, right? So it's like, what do you have to offer the world? Now, there's many things you can offer the world, but when you get in the world arena of business, the goal is there are problems that people will pay for. You've got them yourself. You want food, you want entertainment, you want to communicate, you want transport. It's just a whole list of things that people will pay for. And there's solutions out there that exist for all of these problems, almost all of them, right? So you've got to find a new solution that solves a problem in a new way. That's less expensive, more convenient. It's got to be something that's going to displace an existing solution. So it's not just you have to have a solution, a new technology. You have to have a new solution that the customer is willing to say, I'll stop doing that and I'll start doing this. Okay? So it's a very hard game to play because it's not just, is this a cool idea? There's all kinds of examples of cool ideas that never went anywhere in the market. Okay, so in my view, this is really an essential part. And there's a lot of other elements that go to a business plan, and I'm not going to try to solve all of that for you. I'm going to try to give you a bit of a template that you can use to guide as you walk through it. There's a couple of kind of like main points I'd like to get across. And there's a little bit of just you brainstorming and thinking about your particular business idea within these contexts. Okay? So we're going to try to move your needle here on what is your value proposition from here to here, and try to make some progress, and then give you a vision about what you have to do in order to really make a lot more progress. Because we're not going to do it here. Right, so I mean, who am I? Great question. My name's John Liechty. I'm a professor of marketing and statistics at Penn State University. So my kind of academic expertise is in marketing research, kind of marketing analytics type work. So 30 years ago, I was a PhD student in the stats lab here, and I was a grad student at Churchill College. So that's my background. I did computational Markov-chain Monte Carlo, Bayesian inference. Gareth Roberts, who's very, very good, was my supervisor. And I was probably the most applied person he had, because I was interested in data and processes. I was interested quite a bit in finance at the time. And I've done quite a bit of work. I've consulted for over 25 years for a little boutique marketing analytics company up in the Boston area. Wrote a lot of the code for them, still write code for them. I built high-frequency stat arb trading strategies for Goldman Sachs. I built credit derivative modeling tools for Morgan Stanley. That was a lot of fun, actually. It was like more than doubled my salary, almost tripled my salary. It was a lot of fun. I'd go into Manhattan and I made a lot of interesting friends. So that's kind of my background. I've always stayed in academia, but I've always had like something like 10, 20% of my time that is essentially entrepreneurial on some level. Okay. I'm right now visiting. I'm on sabbatical, so I'm visiting the Judd Business School in the marketing department, and I'm a visiting fellow here at Churchill. So it's kind of fun. My wife and I met here in Cambridge, got married here in Cambridge, went to America, had kids. They all have left the nest and we're back. It's like I don't know what you call it, but it's pretty good. It's pretty fun. And spring almost has arrived, so it can't get any better than that almost, right? So, one thing that happened in my life was I went to my dean maybe 5 or 6 years ago. If you're at an institution for a very long time, you lose kind of that negotiating power to keep your salary up if you don't, go out and get external offers and things like that. I wasn't really doing that. I was kind of doing my other kind of entrepreneurial activities. So I had this little talk with him. I said, look, if you'll just raise my salary and make it close to the market, I'll stop consulting, which I largely have done. Although I still rent my software to the guys in Boston, so they pay me every month. And I'll work on some really hard problems that are kind of societal problems. So I made an additional case to him. He did that, and I don't know if he was going to hold me to it. But anyway, I decided to go out and do it. So I have founded 2 startups recently that are active. One is an antiviral therapy for COVID, so it's a cure for COVID, essentially, using very similar technology to the mRNA vaccines. We're in the process of doing a hamster study at Fort Detrick in the United States, which is their BSL level 4. It's kind of the equivalent of the Wuhan lab in the United States. And negotiating with Penn State about the licenses for the patents and all of those things, and rummaging around for money and talking to VCs about what their thresholds are. I don't really know the pharmaceutical world at all, but my friend came to me and said, I have a cure for COVID, what do we do? And I said, I'll help you. And so it's evolved along that way. And the other one I've started is a nuclear power company called Next Gen Nuclear Power. It's boutique. It's really doesn't have any intellectual property. I'm essentially a broker here. I got involved in this with my university at Penn State. My dean's like, why are we doing nuclear power at the business school? And I said, there's a lot of problems in the world that the solution is not technical. Like the technical solution exists. The solution depends on your ability to organize the capital. That's really what's important. And so that's essentially what we're doing. We're helping them raise, it's an enormous number, like $2.3 billion is what they need. Not all at once. We're starting off smaller than that. And so besides fundraising, we're helping them because they're a very small reactor design. It's a microreactor. The whole thing with the power generation units, you could probably fit 4 of them in here. And it would power 5,000 or 6,000 homes for that. So you could probably power all of Cambridge with this room full of those reactors. Maybe not quite, but it's some impact of that neighborhood. So I'm helping with, it's very small scale, so the power conversion problem needs new technology, so I'm helping with that. They have a few other, we're in Dubai trying to raise money, so we have to get water desalinization. Don't have to, but it really is of strategic importance and helps move the conversations along. So that's my background. I've never taken a business class in my life, but I've taught a lot of them. So. When I was going to school, I was like, I liked math and I liked business. And so my thinking was, I don't think I'm disciplined enough as an individual to learn math on my own. I think math's a lot harder to learn than business is. So I'll force myself to learn it by getting a degree in it. Mathematics, that is, and then I'll just do the business stuff kind of on the side. So that gives you a background of who I am and where I'm coming from. That make sense? Okay with that? Okay, any questions or, no, we're good? Yeah.
Where do you find your co-founders?
Sorry, what do I?
Where do you find your co-founders?
My co-founders?
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. It's you talk to people and you see who's good. So on the therapeutic side, one of the co-founders is a biologist who developed the methodology and has the patent, and he came to me. So we're co-founders. And then I had an executive education class, a guy who had a bunch of GlaxoSmithKline Wellcome experience and Johnson & Johnson experience was in the class. He was really excited and interested in what I was doing, and so we brought him in. We just keep talking to people and keep pitching and trying to find 100,000 there, 50,000 there. Penn State, nuclear power, a really good friend from a long time who has a little boutique custom hedge fund, but his real job, day job, is he runs operations at Boston Consulting Group. It's about a $10 billion a year operation. And he's got a clean tech background, raising funds with Blackstone and doing investment there. That crashed in 2010, so we had to go back to BCG. But he's really interested in this. And then I've got a IP attorney in State College near Penn State. I know just a connection. And then my brother, who his distinction is that he was at Deutsche Bank when the financial crisis happened in 2010, and he survived 13 rounds of layoffs at Deutsche Bank. So he's really got some good insight and chops when it comes to talking to the really big established investment community. You just kind of have to have a way of talking to people, listening, thinking, sitting back, keeping a lot of notes. I have a lot of things organized in OneNote. A lot of information organization is important. So there's no clear answer, but you can spot good people. And then we have 4 right now. Sorry, 5, because we have one person who's a nuclear engineer who's Emirati, so he's from the United Arab Emirates. He's on the team too. But we had probably like 7 or 8 people, and they just kind of filter off. They just kind of, this idea of being persistent. I've been trying to raise money out of the UAE for over 2 years now. I'm maybe going to get a letter of intent from one of the funds in the next month or 2, maybe. So you just have to not give up and not be discouraged. And you have to have a team that will kind of tell you, like my friend from the UAE, he'll say, we're not going to stop until we look in the eyes of the decision makers and know they understand, and then they say no. I'll say, okay, that's fair, we'll do that. Is that okay? Okay. Okay, so for you guys, I think the thing I wanted to do is to have you kind of begin with the end in mind. So you've got a 5-minute presentation, right? You are going to talk about your business idea for 5 minutes and try to win a little bit of capital to help move you down the road. Okay? If you focus on that. I probably wouldn't do much else besides focusing on that between now and that 5-minute presentation to the time that you put towards your entrepreneurial activities. Does that make sense? Until you've really got something you can talk to your mom about, or your grandma's better, who doesn't know anything about your technology, and is a generation or 2 removed, and she says, oh, yeah, that's a nice idea. That would really work. I understand what you're saying. Right? Get it to that level if you can. It's really good to do. Okay. So your 5-minute presentation, what has it got to contain? Right? The basic business idea, what can basically turn into a real idea. So anybody have an idea why I brought this? This is not a water bottle for me to drink out of, it's a prop. I do drink out of it though, this is my water bottle. But what do you think of this one? Everybody see it? See what's in the front of it? In the back of it? Yeah. I know, it's a strange imprintation I had when I was here. I know, are you a Liverpool? I'm a Liverpool fan, okay, so why would I have something, why would something like this sell? What is it satisfying? Think about that, right? Would everybody want this? Probably. You have a what? Yeah, Sheffield United, yeah. So that everybody's got different ones they would. Okay, so think about this as we go through this. What have you got to have in your 5-minute presentation? The first thing you have to have is, what are you doing? What's your product or service? What are you bringing to market? Is it a gadget? Is it some kind of web-based tool? Is it a service in terms of helping walk people through buying a house? Or I don't know, what is it? What is it you're going to bring? Okay. Second thing is, who wants what you're offering? That's why this is here to some degree. I thought it's a little bit facetious, I know. But not everybody's going to want a Liverpool water bottle. Your product does not have to solve everybody's problems, right? This is not going to work for Chelsea and Man U fans at all. But for me, it was really nice. I like it. It satisfies a lot of problems for me. It helps me. I'm willing to pay money for it. Okay? So keep that in mind. You're not solving for everybody, but you do have to be pretty specific about who cares about your product. And you have to be pretty compelling. It's like, why would they care about your product? No? What's your competitive advantage? Like, what is it you have that makes you distinct and different? Among all water bottles out there, that makes this distinct and different. The trademark and the legal right to use this and put it on it. That gives the company that owns that a competitive advantage, because anybody else tries to do this will get sued and shut down. So for this target market, this is important. Okay. So, why is it that when you go into the marketplace and have this great idea that suddenly works and starts making money, that Adidas or IBM or somebody else is not going to come in and say, oh, that's a great idea. There's no protection there. There's nothing that's blocking me from that. That's pretty easy. I'll just do that. Add it into my portfolio. Thank you very much for coming up with that idea. Appreciate it. You got to have a good answer for that if you want to get money from people. Okay? Very important. Or, why is this solving something that no one's ever been able to do before that people would like to do? Like going to Mars, for example. Pretty crazy, but there's a group of people that will pay to go to Mars. We just don't have a solution to that problem yet. Yeah, I'm thinking that one through personally. But anyway, I'm not going to go to Mars, but maybe I will. You've got to have this, and it's got to be distinct. It can be a patent. It can be know-how. It can be a relationship. But usually it's something that's defensible in court, or it's something that's really a small group of and you can keep it quiet, right? The classic example of keeping something quiet is the formula for Coca-Cola syrup. Held in a vault in Atlanta, and I think like 2 people had the combination to the vault or something like that. I kid you not. And think about trying to mix that kind of stuff and make that kind of stuff in bulk and buy things that come in and, and not let somebody sneakily figure out what's going into that syrup. But that gives them that distinction. But plus, the money they put behind the brand. So these 3 elements have got to be there. What's your product or service? Who are you going to sell it to? What advantage do you have? And then last but not least, are you going to make money? Right? So I got F equals ma in there. We all know what that is, right? Force equals mass times acceleration, Newton's laws. We're not quite to that level of sophistication, but I've got pi equals r minus c has got to be greater than 0. What does that mean? Take a guess. Profit, revenue minus cost has got to be greater than your profit. Pi has got to be equals your revenue minus your cost. That's got to be greater than. It doesn't have to be to start with, right? Uber. Was their profit minus revenue minus cost greater than 0? For a long time, it wasn't. It was less than 0, and basically they raised a whole bunch of capital, and they burnt that capital in subsidizing rides across the globe so they could build up market share and get penetration. But they started running out of capital, and they switched the model once they got it established. So there's got to be a path where eventually you get there. Okay. If you don't have something to say about these, you're going to have the same experience I talked about. Somebody with real money is going to look at you, unless it's your mom or dad who's just going to give you, a pat on the back and here's part of your inheritance early. You're not going to get a look in. It's serious money. And if you eventually want to be on the other side of this and think about it yourself, like say you were successful and had $100 million in the bank, what are you going to do with it? Net of philanthropy. Right? You're not going after philanthropic money, I assume. You might be with some social enterprise where there's a public good and there's no clear business model, but there's people who care about this particular problem in society and they're willing to put money behind it. Then you can kind of change this somewhat, but you have to have some measure of impact that they can say, yeah, okay, it was worth me giving the money to there because you've in some way measured that you've reduced human suffering to some degree. Okay, we all okay with this? Okay. Another thing I want to get across is that startups and companies are different. The startup activity that you're doing right now is not a company. Startups are small teams, they're temporary organizations, and they're searching for a way to make money. They're searching for a way to get a product or service out there. They can put all the pieces together in the economy and then scale it once they get money behind it. Prototype, fail, prototype, get it, yeah, it's working. We can show that we have a way to make money, profitability. In the pharmaceutical world, it's pretty simple. Animal data, successful animal data trials get you money. Hamster studies, mouse studies, in vitro in the test tubes does not get you very much money. Successful animal data gets you money. Then they're moving away from kind of large animal studies towards these things called like lung chips. So they're like basically synthetic lung cells, and you test them on that and other things. But the reason that happens is because the Food and Drug Administration in the US and their equivalent in the UK will not let you go to human trials, and you can't then get a product to humans without the human trials until you have that data. It's much more complicated, but it has the same type of idea. Prototype, get it out there, demonstrate that it's going to work. A company, on the other hand, is established. This is Mark Zuckerberg in his dorm room in Harvard, coding up something, see if he can get something where some people get traction on it. And he says, oh yeah, I'll call it Facebook. This is Facebook today, right? Big established revenue coming in, or Google or Alphabet or something like that. So these are very different activities. You can have these kind of startup groups or innovation groups within big companies where they're saying, go build something new. We've got all this, and this is a really hard problem if you end up in a big company. We've got this revenue coming in, this excess profit. You've solved the problem. Society loves you. They're patting you on the back. What do you do with that excess profit? You can either give it back to your shareholders, or you can invest in things you think will give a better return than putting it in the bank. Basically putting it in the bond market. If you think you can do that, then you do it. And so you can have this kind of activity within here, but you guys are not there. You're over here. Okay? So don't expect, the thing is, don't expect to be putting everything together. You don't need accounts receivable. You don't need a legal team. You don't need a lot of the elements of a big corporation to figure out how to do mass production of the manufacturing at this point. It's kind of a sense of where that goes, but you have to figure out if your customers like what you have to offer, if you have a way to get it down to a price point that they'll buy it. Okay, so why do most startups fail? This is the interactive part.
Science doesn't work.
What?
The science doesn't work.
Science doesn't work. No. Good answer, though. I like it. It's okay. Be willing to fail. If you're going to be a business person, be willing to fail. Like, you guys have an advantage, really, to be honest with you. Like, a really good mark on a paper is 60 or 70, right? Out of 100. That is failing in America. I had students who get a 60 or 70 on their exams. They're just like in my office, going to die. Not in their office, just celebrating, right? So they have this false reality of what it's like in the real world, because success rates in the real world are not 60 or 70. Like, if you get a 20 or 30% of success with your real ideas, you're really going to be successful. So at least you guys get a bit of that reality. Why do they fail?
Over-promising, under-delivering?
Yes, that could be part of it. You're on the right. You're a good track. Yeah. Other ideas? What? Run out of money. That is a good thing. Yes, they don't get the burn rate right. You guys know about the story. You should read Elon Musk's biography if you want to learn a bit about this, right? I mean, he would make his decision by, this is my burn rate. And will it cost me more to actually, in terms of, how much can I afford to spend every day to get me to my goal? And if by spending money on doing this, it will cost me less than delaying it and not doing the activity, then he would spend the money. So he'd make some kind of what seemed like unusual decisions as to when he'd spend money, because it would accelerate, because he knew he had this much time until he couldn't pay his engineers anymore if he didn't deliver something. For him, it was a successful launch. For this was SpaceX, it was. Okay, the number one reason businesses fail is they build something nobody wants. It's the number one reason they fail. By a mile. They can hire the wrong team, they can not raise enough money, they can overpromise the investor, not think carefully about their budget, but it's not overwhelmingly, they have this engineering curse that I've got an idea, I've got a cool technology, everybody should want this. It's just super cool. I mean, look, I invented it. Or I found a friend who invented it. Okay. Same thing, no market need. Number two is hiring poorly, you get the wrong team, run out of cash, just two different surveys. But the name of the game is, if you don't understand what your customer wants, you will fail. If you think you know what your customer wants, and you're not, you guys are scientists, right? No, yes? Any arts and literature guys? Okay. Become a scientist. What's the basic idea of the scientific method? What's the basic idea of the scientific method? What? Say it, go ahead, say it loud. You have a hypothesis, okay? Your first product that you're putting out there is a hypothesis. Your hypothesis is the world will want that. And what do scientists do? They test the hypothesis by collecting data, by putting it in front of customers and saying, what do you think? The customers go, what are you thinking? Right? You have to become scientists, essentially. And you've got to talk to a lot of potential customers. Because not every customer will tell you, not every customer is representative. But if you talk to enough customers, you'll begin to get a theme out of it. Okay? Does that make any sense? Yeah.
Do you think you can go too far with that?
What?
Can you ask customers too much? If you're making something new, I think I read something like Steve Jobs being asked about his phone design.
Yeah, Steve Jobs is an interesting guy. So he would not do traditional market research. And he had balls. Let's just put it down to that, right? I mean, and he had very good instinct. He had very good taste. He really did. So he would look at it and say, essentially, he would go, the way he ran Apple was every day at 4 o'clock, he walked into this lab, this room, and it had all the major projects that he was working on, that Apple was working on. And he would pick up the iPhone and he'd flip it around and ask questions and try out the different things every day and what's going on here and let's try to do this. And it was very designed, very, I know what I want. So if you're developing a consumer product, you're a consumer, right? And that's the great thing about marketing and market research is that you're in the set, so to speak. So that's really what Jobs did, is he was able to come in and say, I'm not going to come from the technology perspective, I'm going to come from what I think is going to work really well. Okay? And so he had some principles that were built in, but I mean, and you can get, eventually what you're going to do is you're going to risk money on a design or an idea, and let's hope you get above 20% success rate, right? Because if you don't, then you're not going to have much capital left. Yes, but in general, if you are that confident and you have, successfully built Apple Computer and hired a CEO you didn't like who drove it into the ground and left and went over and started another company, I can't remember what the other computer company was, and you came back and revived Apple Computer. By the way, Bill Gates gave him the loan to revive Apple Computer. He was 90 days away from bankruptcy when Bill Gates gave him $400 million because Bill liked the competition to have him there. Then yeah, I think trust your gut. Otherwise, I'd recommend you go talk to customers. But he is, you know, he is an exceptionally insightful person. So good point. Not surprising, these guys failed. This one's maybe a little surprising because it's kind of interesting. The technology is really cool, but they weren't really solving a problem. There was nothing that people said, I really got to have those Google Glasses to do X. They're just kind of a fun entertainment toy. Okay. Like the internal combustion engine cars, that solves some real problems for everybody. Okay. And then this one, this is just probably a marketing research study gone awry. But hey, they can do it. They can technologically design and develop things that taste like almost anything, probably. So I'm not surprised that one died. In this kind of arena, so they say like something on the order of like 95% of new product introductions, which are mainly little tweaks like this in the consumer packaged goods world, fail. Very hard to get shelf space at Sainsbury's, Tesco. In the US, you've got to generate, I think it's on the order of $15, $20 million a year in revenue per product category to get on the shelf in most of those stores. Okay. So you've got to be satisfying a need that a lot of people care about. Of course, Amazon's tricked that up quite a bit. Okay, so this is a tool for organizing your exploration. So you're doing the exploration, you're trying to figure out. This is a fairly decent tool. It's called the Business Plan Canvas. It's got 3 main boxes to it, or areas to it. The first one's all about your product. So what is your product? What do people care about your product? How can you get your product in front of them? How can you keep track of customers and attract them to be interested in actually adopting your product and communicating with them? Okay. So this is all about the value proposition. What are you going to deliver? And this is really what we're going to talk about the rest of the lecture or discussion tonight. Then you have another element here, which is like, this is kind of where's your competitive advantage and how are you going to pull together the resources and make sure that you can actually deliver this. So you have an idea, then you have to figure out how you actually do it in a way that's sustainable. Not sustainable in the sustainable like world that you might think of that world, but sustainable in the sense that you're going to make profits and keep your competitors from stealing your product ideas. And then you have to say something about why it's going to actually make sense, profit-wise. Okay, so who's it for? What value do they get? That's where we're going to go for the rest of this. We're only going to look at these two right here. Okay? So, observe. What do your customers want? Go out and think about what your customers want within a particular problem area. You know, why are they acting the way they're acting? Why are they not doing other things? Why would they buy your product? And then you design. And you take it over to customers and say, what do you think about this? Back and forth a bit. You have your internal discussions. What would they say? And that's how you develop something that is a value proposition. This product is going to solve problems for people, a group of people, in a way that's not being done right now. Then you've got something to take to your business pitch. Okay? Okay. So, you can restate it in terms of these questions here. Problem statement. What is the problem that you're trying to address? Lots of different problems out there. The business-to-business arena, business-consumer arena. Okay? Who cares about this problem? What are they doing today to solve that problem? That's your competition. This is who your customer is, and this is your, what's going to drive your product. Why is it hard to solve that problem? Like, why aren't lots of people doing that? Why are not people in that arena, right? So this is where you start getting to this kind of advantage or competitive advantage. What is it that keeps people out of this? How big is the opportunity? Is this a lot of people, a lot of money, a little bit of money? And then, how are you going to solve the problem that's different than these other? Making sense? Does everybody here have a business idea? Who here does not have a business idea? This is relevant. Yeah, you're going to do this. Okay. Take a few minutes and write down an answer to all of these questions quickly. Brainstorm, just lightning. Okay. Huddle up, chat. This is your problem. Okay, I can see I've got people involved, and good. This is good. We're thinking. We're going. I know we've got this scheduled for an hour, so I don't want to overextend your hospitality.
And then we can continue conversation.
Okay. And then my wife will not be too mad at me for being too late for dinner either. Which, for me, I found the happy wife, happy life policy works very well. Okay, so please come up with answers for this. Refine this. Think about this. This is a great way to start figuring out. You should be able to say answers to all of these. Like, how do you solve the problem? Why is it not being solved today or in the same way as if you think you can do something different? How are you going to make money from that? You'd like to be able to get yourself to a statement like this. For a particular target group of customers, for Liverpool football fans who need water bottles, who have the significant problem of not hydrating themselves during exercise, my product provides brand identity and loyalty to the club, which is unlike the water bottle for Manchester United. Okay? So something as simple as that. This is a kind of a template of the flow of what you want to be able to write something out of that nature and then be able to say to somebody straight in the eye, just tick it off. Okay? This is what I'm doing. This is the problem it's solving, and this is why it's different than what other people are doing right now. We're going to get yourself down to that level. Okay? I won't, in the interest of time, have you do that, but I was going to have you do that, but I tend to talk too long. Okay? So this is another little tool, and there's 2 PDFs.
I'll put it in the resources folder. There's a resources folder link on the website. And if you go on the website and you check that you've signed up for updates, then when I've done that, I'll just send the people on that mailing list to say it.
So there are articles by the people who developed the Business Canvas tool, and then they have this kind of supplement to it. So this is a way of thinking there more detail about why customers would care about your product and what you can offer. And so they break it down. And if you want to just walk through really quickly how Airbnb fits into this, it's useful to think about. So what are the problems customers are trying to solve? Like, what's something in their life they're trying to solve? So for Airbnb, people go and they go on vacation, they go on trips, and they need a place to rent. And the traditional hotels have got price structures and offerings that don't really always match. And there's been a small rental market where people do Airbnbs and other types of rentals that are more even moving in where I live in State College, Pennsylvania. The football team is very popular, the American football team, and people will actually leave their houses and rent them out to people who are coming in just for the football weekend. And so you have these kind of odd little markets that have been happening. So that's essentially the problem. You think jobs, you think about problems that people want to have solved. And sometimes it's really functional. I need a place to stay. Sometimes it's emotional. I need entertainment or excitement or kind of that thrill you get when you're in the crowd and they score a goal. I mean, really, it's really intangible, but it's really essentially. Or it could be social status. I'm doing this. The old thing is, how do you know if somebody has a lot of money? Because they're driving a Bentley. How do you know that? Well, because Bentley just costs a lot of money. So, it's like some people do that just to say, okay, I've got this. So some people have social needs they satisfy with the products that they buy. And so, you can think about Airbnb. It's actually a platform. So it means there's 2 sets of customers. There's the people who are wanting to rent their houses, and there's people who want to rent them from them, right? And so they're going to have different challenges. Maybe publishing the ad, managing reservation, and then they like this ease of use on the other side. And then you think about what's stopping people from getting involved. Why is this not a very big marketplace? And what are the pains and difficulties there? And a lot of what happens in innovation in consumer markets is just making things easier for people to do. You guys ever rented a car at the airport? It used to be horrible, for me at least. I'd go to off the airport, have, all the baggage. We have 5 boys, my wife and I, managing bouncing high sugar levels and all this. And we have to wait for like 20 minutes to get up there to talk to somebody and da-da-da-da-da-da. And okay, you get this car right here. We'll give you that. And like, off you go. Enterprise, national car, actually national, solved that problem completely. I have something called the Emerald Isle. Now I get off the plane, I walk out to where the cars are. I walk over and pick a car, put my stuff in it, drive out, show my driver's license, and I'm gone. That's it. The only thing is the debate about which car we choose. And once we got the Batman car. You seen the recent Batman, the Challenger? We were in Miami, we got stuck there, storm came through, my son dances down at the Miami City Ballet School, and we're down visiting him, we got stuck there, and so I was like, oh man, flew Spirit Air, which is like Ryanair, it's really cheap, poor customer service, and so I'm like, okay, let's get a fun car. So we got it has like 770 horsepower. I mean, it is, you put your foot down and you just move. And so then we're like, they canceled us again. We're not gonna be able to get back to like Wednesday. My wife's like, I can't do that. And so I'm like, we could just drive. I got the Batman car. So we drove the Batman car back. It was pretty fun, it really was. So you wanna try to make it really easy, right? But what are problems? Like the guests could come and damage and thrash my place. I have no idea who you're bringing in here and how do I vet them? And is this really a safe place for me to go and rent? Can I trust the people who are offering it, right? And then you have the gains, like additional revenue, choice, local experience, a different structure, and that is what the customer wants. You've got to begin to understand what it is that they're trying to solve, the problem or job they're trying to accomplish, what's stopping them from that, and what would they consider to be a positive. So that's getting to know the customer. That's the hypothesis testing. Getting trying to think about those answers, right? Then the product is, what are you going to actually provide for them? And so the product, and many of the products that are coming out recently are just marketplaces. I'm going to provide a marketplace that has certain characteristics and get these two groups together, right? And with the pain reliever, Airbnb was clever. They put $1 million, it's not that hard to do. If you aggregate enough of these experiences, you can figure out an insurance. They just go and reinsure this. They're not necessarily covering that. They just add something into the service fee and they go back onto the reinsurance market and buy a contract, right? There's established markets to provide that for them. They're just aggregating the people. But if you rent, you get up to $1 million coverage on your home from damages. And it's, as they say in their description, every booking, every time. It's like, oh, maybe I could do this. Then you've got to be really good at how you vet and manage the flow of the people and the feedback and the ratings and that to make sure that that has integrity because you're now bearing some risk. You've got to price properly, right? And then you start seeing where the gains, so you're trying to match the product, but you're trying to match the characteristics so it's actually satisfying. Or you don't have things in your product that they don't care about. I'm minimizing this pain for you. I don't have that pain. Well, but I'm minimizing it for you. And it's very valuable and it's hard for me to do. Thank you very much. I'll go somewhere else, right? And I don't care about this service or the plus part about it. You think you're promoting it. That's not really what I care about. So that's the important part about just talking. You just talk with people or try to do it yourself. Like one of the things I do is I study technology transfer from university out into the commercialization world. And one of my experiments is this biotech startup. It's an experiment on how Penn State tech transfer function actually works. Instead of talking to people, I just did it. I did it for other reasons too. Mainly like I don't want to have another pandemic happen like we had with a coronavirus jumping from mammals to humans, and this kind of technology will address future ones like that. So I'm hoping that it's like insurance for the public good, save us another like $4 or $5 trillion, whatever it was, globally. Okay. So I've got another exercise I've set to you as homework, which is come up with at least one thing in each one of these categories for your product, for your customers, and then how your product will address that. So this is iterative. You think you've got a basic idea about what you want to offer the customers. Okay, You could just create this, and then you'll find 5 or 6 people who are target customers and say, does this make sense to you? When you're trying to solve this problem, is this really a pain? Or what else is a pain? What do you find really challenging about this? And would you think this would be positive or not? So you could iterate with a bunch of people and refine this until you get something that seems like, yeah, this, or people saying, yeah, that seems about right. And some people, this is a pain, other people it's not, and they have maybe a different pain, but you'll find this kind of mix of things. And then you say, well, would this solve it for you? Would this really make it that much easier for you? Yes, no, right? Does that make sense? Essentially, I think that's what Steve Jobs was doing, is he was iterating. He was like, this is a problem people have. He wanted to put cell phones and CD players into one thing. That was the iPhone. It's like, that would be interesting. He didn't have to, it's like, it's like if I came up with a cure for COVID, would anybody want that? Yeah, so that one's, the demand's pretty clear. The question is, can I actually come up with something that works at a price point that is not, millions of dollars? And so that's what he did. And then he did a lot of this just himself, right? And he had other people in the design team doing it with him too and interacting, going back and forth. So this is very valuable for you to do, okay? And once you do that, then go back and answer these questions again. And go back and answer these questions again. Come with your statement. It will change. It will refine. Okay? So I misjudged this because I talked too much. But this is what I would have had us do if we had maybe an hour and a half. We would have done this, and then I would have had you come up with at least one thing for each of these categories, and I would have had you come back and do this again. Okay? But you can do this external. In your group, huddle up, find your roommate, somebody who's just good enough friend that they'll listen to you and put up with you for an hour and say, this is really important to me. Okay? And seriously, it's like you've written an essay before or a story or something, and it's super clear in your head and it's just mumble jumbo on the paper. And the best cure for that, absolutely the best cure for that is what? What? Read it out loud to somebody. Just reading it out loud by itself will do wonders for your grammar, your readability, your organizational structure. But read it out loud to somebody who's not an expert in the area and get it so they go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Then you really are becoming a good communicator. You're going to start making a difference in the world outside of your little sphere of influence. Do it as a TED Talk. I've done 2 TED Talks if you're interested, but you don't have to be interested. One is why I think artificial intelligence will never take over the world. The other one's how I'd cure diabetes if I had a hedge fund. Which I don't have, so I'm not going to cure diabetes that way right now. But maybe eventually I will. You never know. I hope to live long enough to do that. Yeah. Okay, what's next? What's next is a lot of questions, a lot of framing, a lot of talking to people, really. Frame, iterate, summarize. Okay. And don't take your eye off the ball, which is, unless you're writing code and you're a good coder yourself, like Zuckerberg, you're not going to probably make a lot of progress on this without some capital behind you. So you got to get yourself, Zuckerberg had the human capital essentially because he could code. So you've got to get yourself down to a pitch that you could walk into somebody and say, I need 100,000 pounds, or I need £1 million to get my prototype to the point that I can test this hypothesis about market demand. Don't go in and say I need $1 billion or £1 billion. Even though I'm asking for 2.3 billion for the energy thing, the first tranche is 3 million. That's my ask right now. All right. Okay. And then if you start getting past that and you get this, and entrepreneurship's not for everybody. It is a slog. It is persistent. You have to be like this dog with a bone that won't give up. and have a sense and then get feedback. And then you got to be able to throw the bone away if you see it's just not going to work. And then go find another bone, so to speak, right? That's really, where you have to go. So that is the whole idea of building a value proposition. This is the business canvas map. Those articles will talk through more detail about each one of these different cells. And every one of these cells contains a whole set of questions you need to go out and answer. And this is not a business plan. Business plans are very short, concise. Here's the problem, here's our solution, here's how much money we need in order to get to this point. Here's a Gantt chart that shows you what we're going to do, timing-wise with milestones, funding coming in at these points as we hit these milestones. That's a business plan. But you're never going to pitch that business plan or even build it if you don't have a good answer to most of these questions. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's how entrepreneurship works, at least at the next level. To go from a vague idea to a, would this actually possibly work? And can I convince somebody with money to help me move along? Or, expertise. You need both of those things, typically, your team and your money behind it. Questions? No? Do you feel like you moved yourself along with your value proposition? Or maybe you've moved yourself along with how you might actually get a value proposition? At least that. If we at least did that, then I think we're okay. If we didn't move our value proposition along a lot, then that's fair enough. That's a hard thing to do. Okay. Well, thanks for your time, everybody. Appreciate
Thanks, John. I'll just wrap up for the recording, and then if we've got any questions, we can just do it a bit more informally. So yeah, thanks a lot for that. I hope you all got something out of it. And if you've got teammates who weren't here today, take that away. If you weren't here, or if you are here now, then all of John's resources, including this recording, are going to be linked from the Enterprise webpage. And probably sometime next week, I'll put up the official entry form. But all the questions that will be asked on that, near enough a final draft of them, are available through the terms and conditions link. If you haven't signed up through the sign up for updates and events, then do sign up. It's not for attendance or anything. It's just so that you're the first group of people that I email about any kind of updates and to give you details for anything. Otherwise, great to see you all. And thanks again, John.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks.